And there you are, Hidden Nation. So good to see you. Welcome into the studio. It's Josh Cary, your hidden entrepreneur. Hidden Nation, are you ready to go deep? I want you to put your thinking cap on, not necessarily academically, but life. Think about your role in this current life and what you're doing and what you're willing to do. And our guest today is the exact person we want along with us for this ride. We're joined by our guest, Robert McGuiness, who is the author of Dropped Calls. You're in for a treat, everybody. Robert, welcome to the program.
Welcome. It's a pleasure being here. Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, likewise. Your book, Dropped Calls, I know it's a collection of 3 short stories that, as you've said, its power is almost in what happens when you put the book down, more than what's in the book. Certainly that's the catalyst. And from what I've read from all the reviews, the one common theme is people say it is deep, it is thought-provoking. What do you say about that?
I wanted it to be thought-provoking, and I want the thoughts that people are having to manifest into behaviors. And I think we collectively want to change the direction that we're heading, because I think it's obvious. And as my mother used to say, is that we have more people living longer than ever, so we must be doing something right. But when you really take a look outside, it doesn't seem like we have sustainability built into that formula. And, civilizations live for 20,000 years. And what we've done in the last 100 or 150 years doesn't seem like we could do that for 20,000 years. Doesn't seem to have sustainability. And that's where the reader hopefully reduces his consumption, thinks twice before he does a lot of things, and really seeks what's missing in our lives these days is spirituality. And I was saying is that it's funny how the pilgrims seeking religious freedom, the only thing they conquered in the New World was spirituality. And now we have these mega churches and we have psychedelic experiences. But with the calcified pineal gland, we haven't the ability to have a spiritual experience. And we've removed ourselves from that part of our lives so thoroughly that it really needs to be explored. And one of the things they said that decalcified the pineal gland, and it's fluoride and aluminum that we consume, even in our drinking water and our deodorant, that was calcifying the pineal gland. One of the only things that can help purge it is Indian tobacco, which is illegal. So there's a reason they don't want us to be spiritual. It doesn't stimulate the economy.
Wow.
And that's not in the book. That's
Yeah,
just from me to you.
That's in you. What
Yes.
was your what was your industry of profession? Where did you come from?
Where did I come from? That's a good question. I
Yeah.
was born in New York, and I lived there till right after high school, and then I came out west. I went up into the hills, and I lived there for a while. And unfortunately, my partner was killed in a motor vehicle accident in '87, and my 20-month-old son was brain injured and severely handicapped. This is now almost 40 years later. He still lives with me. He's on his feet. He talks. He graduated high school, but he still has lifelong disabilities. So primarily, I've been a caregiver most of my adult life.
Hmm.
And that's the truth. Is I still have my property in the hills. I just did a 130-acre oak restoration project with the aims at bringing acorns back into the diet in a sustainable way. I'm also very fond of lilies, the Lilium genus, and I've been growing lilies for 30, 40 years now as well. And then everything else that a guy would do, I like music,
Yeah.
I do this and that,
What is
but
the
I do,
overriding what is the
I
overriding theme of this book?
the overriding theme in the book, um, I think it's spirituality is really the one. And if I bring it into the Oak Restoration Project, I think that fits right in because we're trying to live a life more simply, and that's one. The second story is more about um, the things that I had read. I had read The Frontiersman of New York, which was written in the 1880s. And I read The Life of Brant, which I had a copy of, written in 1838. And um, I brought it into modern days. A young man goes to Wisconsin and he kills a couple of people. And the Tsar is so impressed with how he rid us of the revolutionaries that he invited them down to his resort. Now, I quote Mao in that, saying that every revolution is a just war, every counter revolution an unjust war. And I just, put that carrot on a stick there. But the czar that I call him invites him down. I don't. It's called Laura Mago. No connection. But the young man is so impressed that he was invited down to rub elbows with the big people. He wants to bring a gift that is worthy. So he scalps the two people that he killed. And as in the American Revolution, he fashioned them onto willow hoops, painted a black line around the circumference because they died at night, a couple of dots because they died by gunshot, and then some lines representing they were defending the streets, which is exactly what we had in the American Revolution. And then not in the story, but in my personal growth in all of this, I realized that the king or the autocrat is an egotist. All the universal signals are afferent and they go to him. They're terrestrial because they're of stuff and of the earth and of money and people. And they're transitory because the universe doesn't exist like that over the long haul. So, with that said, the czar is fascinated by the gifts, and he hangs one up in the east window with the hair facing in, and one in the west window with the hair facing out. And he's sitting at his desk looking at the one to the east window, and all of a sudden it starts oscillating and bombarding him with every truth of the universe like a laser beam. So much information so fast that he has seizures and he falls away from his desk. And when he comes to, he can't look at that scalp anymore, and he looks at the other one facing the other way, and it's one man's life, and it's at talking speed. And as he has this relationship with it, he grows empathy for the revolutionaries, people he despised just, a minute ago. And all of a sudden, he's like understanding them. And what happened at that turning point in the story is he went from egotist to altruist. He went from afferent to efferent. He went from terrestrial to celestial and from transitory to eternal. And that's the lesson. And that's through my books and through myself is how do we grow back spirituality if we're not able to take that minute and to listen to what is being presented to us. So that's a part of that story, and to me it's the most powerful part of that story, and it's something that I hope everybody gains something from, and realizes that big changes can happen, but it's really the little changes that will make a difference in the long run. So just you keep your mind and your ears open. Put your wallet down for a minute, put the need for that down. So anyway, is that story I really appreciated. Like I said, it came from reading those history books that were 150 years old. And there's a lot of insight there because those behaviors are still there. If you talk about Alexander Fraser Tytler, he was a Scottish writer in the 1700s. And he wrote Cycles of Democracy. And he was saying you start in, and no democracy had lasted more than 200 years, by the way, at the time. He said is that we start out in bondage. And when we're in bondage, we get spiritual. And when we get spiritual, we get brave. And after we become brave, we become independent. And after we become independent, we become greedy. And after we become greedy, we become um, lazy. And then after we become lazy, we are back into bondage. And that's the cycle, you know? So maybe a little ahead of my time because I'm thinking we're already under an autocrat. So as if we can head it off by introducing spirituality, maybe we can be one step ahead of the game.
Tell me about the concept of the cell phone as it pertains to your story. You had some fascinating insight on this.
Well, uh, cell phones, we already know, they put us in the one of the four F's in psychology, you know, and what that happens is we take our nutrition in, and instead of it, you know, they've actually photographed long-term memory being made, and it shows proteins going out on the axonal lens and layering on top of it, each other like onion skins. They've identified more than 400 proteins in that process. 80 of them are associated with disease states. 16 of them are associated with depression. So when someone's going to therapy and we go through the layers and we try to dig a little deeper, it's really what happens is you get down to a disease state or a depression state, and it's a trigger. And then all of a sudden, we can't get past that. We can't dig any deeper. So they got to take a break, and the next time they can maybe dig a little deeper. But that's because we're hitting on those memories that are triggers that are associated with depression. You know, so that's one part of it. So is with cell phones everywhere and being in you know, even they found them when they're not on and they're in your freezer and turned off, there's still an anxiousness associated. And people are wondering, did I get a call? Do I need to check my phone? And that is the same thing because it's making macromolecules that aren't allowing you to learn, and they're not allowing you to put proteins on your axonal lens associated with that long-term memory. So you're becoming stupid. and I don't even like to say that because I don't want to say that to anybody or accuse them of anything, but that's what's happening, you know. Now, further, they've identified memory loss associated with cell phones, even when they're just using them. So, like short-term memory loss, like a waitress taking orders and remembering and stuff. But they also found that they damage DNA. And when you damage DNA, that's where our phylogenetic memories are stored. And if we have a gene for a or a sequence that's associated with something that our ancestors did, and we alter it, we lose our phylogenetic memories. And these are memories that could be before we even walked upright, things to know to be afraid of, things that are associated with common sense. You know, so to have a massive amount of people losing their phylogenetic memories simultaneously, it leaves us in a position, and maybe some people will still have them, but if it's not the norm, then they don't function properly. You know, so we're losing that, and that's I can't believe with all the brilliant minds and all the brilliant people in the industry that this hasn't been talked about before, and it's not a good enough reason not to do it. You know, the ability to communicate, the way the government was passing out free phones, the way that um, you can't take a phone from your child because they have rights too. And you can't even be a parent if your child has a phone because you let that third person in between you, you know, and that should be criminal. But um, when you lose your phylogenetic memories, a lot of those have to do with women's ability to parent. You know, those are things that are or we're born with that are normal, and to take that from them is again, like I said, to me, it's a crime against humanity. Um, you know, and again, I'm just one person, and I'm easy to silence, but it's a concern, and I hope everybody sees it that way. And you know, they can take all of that first story in there, the 5 Gs over Walden Pond, where we're thinking of Walden Pond as the, you know, the bastion of serenity and turning it into in modern man's footprint, is desert. The Like I said, you can take all of that and put me in the category of a Luddite, someone that is against technology. And there's a lot of wonderful things in technology, and there's lots of ways to use technology without flooding the market with it. And like I said, and robbing people of their phylogenetic memories and their short-term memory loss and their ability to learn and remember. Those things are they should be sacred, So
Yeah. Speaking of
it,
sacred, when you study and observe your own spirituality, really define that for us in the context of life and death. How do you view that?
it's very well, as I view it, is I believe that the continuity is always there in your spirit, and it only changes in the body. So I believe that before I was born, I was the same as after I'll die, and I only have this moment now in this particular body. And it's a test, can I remain true to myself and true to my faith? And I also believe is that when we were talking earlier about the terrestrial aspect of it, is that's what you get in this body is you get stuff, you get material, and if you can remain spiritual, you can have the continuity from before this life to after this life, and don't throw it away for stuff, and try to remember that spirituality. The last story is Other Gods, um, where there becomes a mass famine, and it's a normal family. They're having Thanksgiving dinner. They go down and volunteer at the free kitchen, and they realize the people working there look as thin and as sickly as the homeless people. Dark circles under their eyes, thin, and up and down the blocks, there's people that are extremely obese, and then people that are extremely thin, and everybody's wasting away. And there's an autistic boy in the household, or they think he's autistic, but he runs around and he's screaming. And he just kept saying over and over again, the food won't give. The food won't give. And finally, one night when he goes to bed crying, his sister comes in to read him a story and calm him down. And he says, I heard from a bee that the food's not going to give. And when they explored that, they realized that any species that creates a god in his own image and then turns his back on him shouldn't be enabled. So the apple tree is making apples, but they have no nutrition in it. The
Wow.
potatoes have no nutrition in it. And then stuff happens, and one guy's defiant, he's not going to die. And then there's a girl that doesn't want to live, and she'd been abused her whole life, and she is just trying to die. And they end up getting together and like being maybe the only two people that they know of, so the story ends, and maybe there were others and other gods too. But the question that made me head in that direction is if we've evolved from a single cell all through history, all the way up, at what point did that single cell have to thank God for the life that it was given? And was it spiritual in the very beginning of life? Or is that something man created millions of years later? And to me, every cell is sacred. And if we protect every cell, we do a really good job at protecting people and larger organisms. So if we can really take that is sacred. The DNA is in there. It lives, and that life is what's sacred. So that's what made me write that story. And I didn't express any of that in the story, but that's why I would say that an apple tree is entitled to its own God, and a potato is entitled to its own God because it's alive, and it has that same, I'm thankful for the life I've been giving, and then Do you want to enable other species that aren't so thankful? Um, so that's where that story came from. So
What is the relevance of the title, Dropped Calls?
we were given opportunities to recognize the departure from our spirituality. And um, it's funny because a drop call is a weird thing. It could be we called up God and the call was dropped, or it could be he called us up, or it could be between two people. So it could be anything. But to me, it was about um, listening to our spirituality and not being able to receive the call.
The call
So
to
that
what, really? The call
to us is for all of those things. If you want to defend your democracy, you need to be in a certain mindset. If you want quiet back, if you want those places that should be sacred back, we need to put the cell phones down. So, and it's funny because I had the three short stories and I had submitted them, and I hadn't really thought about the title, and they called up and they wanted me to come up with a title for the collection of them on the spot, and that's what I came up with was dropped calls. And I was thinking that very thing is that these are times, was with the other gods, there's ways that the food would have um, continued providing nutrition if we had behaved properly, but we didn't. So it stopped providing nutrition.
mm,
The cell phones, the same things. If we put those down, we wouldn't have been in the predicament that's in the story. So they all have that connecting thing, is that as if we think about it and we try to do the right thing. And each one of those has a little bit to do with how we can bolster the importance of the life of a single cell and carry that into us and put that back out. And it seems like most of the time when we're held to task on that, we drop the call.
what does your personal spiritual practice look like today?
Not much, not much, you know. Um, I nobody wants to hear what I have to say about that, is I feel like if you want to talk to God, you have to go up the mountain and talk to God, you know, and I say fellowship is an obex to divinity, meaning that when we're bolstering our egos and chatting about God, we're about as far away from divinity as we can get. If you're thinking about meeting your maker on a daily basis, you're in a spiritual zone. So remember that we're only here for a minute. It's very fragile. And then the other part of that is in some isolation or spending your time is I still believe in helping everybody I can and helping everything I can and holding each cell as sacred. And it's really funny because I believe that was the Native Americans' thought, even without the microscope or knowing a lot of the medicine that we know now. I think they held not just the life sacred, but the interactions of everything and a purpose for everything as sacred. So I see the big wheel and I see that we've gone 180 degrees, and now we're at the exact opposite. And I feel those things that a lot of Native Americans held as truths or truths for myself.
Wow. Hidden Nation, I hope you got as much out of this as I have. Like I started the show, I said the author really, what he puts down on paper is not about what's on the paper, but it's about what you take away from it when you put the book down. And for me, at least, and I'm sure the same for you, that it's going to be what happens with this interview, with this dialogue, that it's not about what we spoke of, but it's now about what you take with you. Final thoughts, Robert, that the listener can take on their day going forward now.
Well, uh, I really hope that you get the book and read it. And I say it like Siddhartha is to read it once is a revelation, but immersed in its pages, enlightenment may develop. And that's what we're really aiming for is to enlighten ourselves and to hold every cell sacred and every living thing sacred. And that's what really has the importance. And if God is trying to get through to you, listen, pick up the phone and listen. Don't drop the call, because it's a burden, and we take that with us, is our lives are short. And if you look at how long man's been on the planet, um, and look at what we've done in the last 150 years. Some of it is beautiful and excellent, and some of it, like I said, is not sustainable, you know? So sort that out for yourself. Think about how much of the things that you do in your daily life that have to do with trying to get money, and if you can keep Sunday sacred and maybe Saturday too, we're heading in the right direction. You know, don't work on those days if you can help it, because every little bit is going to help, So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think you'd enjoy the other book that I wrote this year, which is The Attenuating Puritan. I want to put a plug in for that. But he's sort of ADHD, maybe a little bit autistic, and he believes he's on the planet to clean up the Garden of Eden. And he uses his body to absorb toxins, and he can meditate and enhance his subcellular components. So he has the ability to absorb and catabolize more, but he always has faith and he always fasts and sweats and thinks. And he gets sick. He has colon cancer, he has liver failure, he has fertility issues, and yet he keeps striving to clean the Garden of Eden up. He doesn't ask for help, but people come to his aid when they realize what work he's doing. At the end of the story, he ends up getting married, and they go to Berkeley through San Francisco to a genetics lab, and they put genes in them, which are actual real genes from bacteria they found, and it gives them the ability to digest plastics. So him and his young wife float out to the islands of trash to eat them.
All right. We'll make sure to link up to that and check that all out. Robert McGuiness, your national treasure. Thank you. The Attenuating Puritan.
Yes.
I appreciate your time today.
And he's got the bloody anal stigmata, which is from the colon cancer, from attenuating too many emulsifiers like polysorbate 80, etc. So anyway, he's a great character. He's a little out there, but he's a great character. I'm writing the sequel to that right now, so hopefully that gets out in the next few months.
Great. Thank you for joining in. We'll keep an eye on your progress. Best of luck going forward. I appreciate your time, Robert.
I appreciate you, Josh. Thank you very much. We'll see you again in the near future.